Hi, Brian. Welcome back.
Hey, Dave. I'm glad to be here.
This week's topic came from a listener who wrote an email that could have been printed as a book about a situation that they had, an aircraft emergency that they had that involved a lot of yelling and confusion and chaos during the middle of this thing. And rather than reading this whole long email, I just want to touch on aircraft emergencies, what we should do when they happen, and maybe some of the things that we can do to limit the amount of confusion and chaos that's happening.
Yeah. Well, I think the secret when you're in a crisis is to hold your breath and panic. That's always been my answer. Obviously, when something happens, it doesn't usually require immediate action. The best thing to do, I find, whether you're your pilot in command or you're some jumper sitting in the back of the bus, is that when something happens, stop. Don't do anything. Take a breath and assess the situation, because most of the time it's not as bad as your initial jolt of adrenaline would suggest it is. So, people bailing out of planes that they don't need to bail out of, pilots that are, doing things up front, assuming that it's the worst, telling jumpers to bail out when it's simply the student leaned against the fuel shutoff valve or something like that, right? So that's the biggest thing that I would recommend people is that when something happens, when you hear a loud bang or you see a little bit of smoke or something's going on, it may not, it could just be a fire extinguisher that has filled the cabin with smoke, that all you got to do is open up the door and calm down, right? So there are real emergencies. There are situations where people do have to jump out of the plane, and sometimes it can get a little bit crazy. But if you do your best to kind of slow down, to breathe, to look around, and in the end, the pilot up front needs to be in command. They need to be not only in command of the piece of metal, but they need to be in command of the people. Right, so they need you to sit down and be quiet and tighten your seatbelt if that's, if you're at low altitude. They need you to be able to create a channel down the middle if everybody is on, you're on jump run and everybody's up and the pilot needs to communicate with the spotter, for instance. They need to be able to see everybody and communicate with everybody. And if everybody's screaming, you can't hear that guy up front that has the intel. They've got the information about what's going on. They can see the instruments. So be quiet, do nothing, and be prepared for what are the possibilities. You're landing in the plane? Well, tighten your seatbelt. What's your helmet going to do if you crash? Is it going to go fly around and bang people in the head? Is it on your head where it should be on takeoff, or is it at least seatbelted in? If you're going to have to jump out of the plane, what's that going to look like? Slow is fast. You've heard it before. You'll hear it again because it's the truth. When people panic and they rush, they speed up, they make mistakes. They try to jump out of airplanes with seatbelts on. Anything that you as a pilot would add?
No, I think you touched on it. I would maybe just add that as well as keeping quiet, maybe remain still.
Yeah.
Especially maybe if you're in a situation with a multi-engine airplane where you say you've lost one, you've got a lot of crazy control forces happening right at that moment, and the last thing you need is a bunch of changing center of gravity to deal with on top of all of that. So, but yeah, I think you hit, from my perspective, pretty much everything. Be calm and quiet and still.
Yeah. Panicking never helps.
Yeah. Now, on the other side, if the airplane is broken into 50 pieces and the cockpit's no longer up front, then maybe it's time to scream and get out.
You're on your own. Well, even then, you move slow, you take in the whole situation when you're trying, you're as calm as you can be. I understand when things are going crazy. I've been there many times myself. You really have to just be a little calmer than you were at the moment of jolt, and breathe.
You have some aircraft stories to share?
Oh, sure. Well, I've done the one where my static line student did shut off the fuel in the Cessna 182 on takeoff over water, and I, as the jump master, was the one that figured out that that's what it was. Fortunately, I fly too, right? So my first thought was fuel starvation. So, yeah, we've had that one. I've bailed out of numerous airplanes that got quiet. I've had the one where we took off in the plane and I'm not going to mention the pilot's name who added oil to the engine prior to that load and forgot the oil cap. But the 206 loaded with first jumpers, one of whom had never even been in an airplane before, managed to circle around and land back on the runway into the wind and the whole thing nice and safe. And of course, I'm trying to keep control of the emotions in the aircraft and make sure the seatbelts are on and tight, and everybody's in a, emergency landing position. And it was really an interesting thing for me to be the jump master, at the age of 19. I'm in command of all these people. And I kind of take a deep breath and I smile and say, okay, here's what we're going to do, everybody. Because I don't really want to tell them the truth just yet, because I don't know how they're going to react, but I do want them to follow my lead and get into a good body position for this landing, because I don't know what it's going to be like. So I said, all right, we're going to do a practice emergency landing. So we're just going to go ahead and land in the plane, and then it'll be great. So it's going to be fun, right? You ready? This is going to be... And so we've got oil covering the windscreen. The pilot can't see squat. He's looking out the side, and he did a great job of putting it back down on the runway. And of course, the engine was quiet, and we land and we stop, and the students go. So that wasn't really a practice, was it? So we pushed the plane back in, and everything was fine. But yeah, there's a long list. The longer you skydive, the more interesting things you get to see. So I find that if you have an open mind to how weird things can get, and you have this sort of blanket winning formula of, when in doubt, do nothing for a moment and calm down and appraise the situation and consider the possibility it's not as bad as you thought it was. And even if it is not so good, how am I going to survive this? What is that going to look like? How am I going to be sort of heroic in my actions and compassionate in my actions, right? Because it's not every man for themselves, right? I mean, to me, the real hero is the guy that's in the back of the bus, scooting everybody out of the plane, go, 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 and making sure the less experienced people do a good exit, that they put their hand on the reserve ripcord before they leave the airplane, making sure everybody leaves. They're not thinking about their own safety as much as everybody as a whole. We all have to survive.
So it sounds like that advice can apply to emergencies under canopy as well.
It does.
Stay calm.
Yep.
Think about it.
Keep breathing.
Act.
Yep. Don't make it worse. That's the main thing.
Brian, insightful as always. And what website do we want to plug today?
Well, bigairsports.com. Sports is with a Z. There's lots of really cool stuff there. I think you'll like it.
Cool. See ya.
Right on.